back to the Neil Haley Show here on the Caregiver Dave Celebrity segment. I'm excited to welcome the program Caregiver Dave Nassaney. Dave, how are you? What's going on, man?
Oh, just doing great. Another beautiful day in sunshine, LA. You're
Awesome.
not so fortunate, are you?
No, not at all. It's cold. It's getting colder and colder. So tell us who our guest is today.
Oh, a beautiful actress of the newly released Accursed, Isabella Vidovich. She is known for her movies Homefront, Wonder, Zombie, the Freeform TV series The Fosters, and she's a daughter of a filmmaker, Elizabella Vidovich. Very similar name. Welcome to the show, Elizabella.
Hi,
Thank you.
Isabella. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Fantastic. So let's talk about it. I guess because it was in the family, did you always want to be an actress?
No, it kind of happened like by a fluke. But I love it. Yeah, it was kind of a funny story, but I fell into it and I love it. And here we are 10 years later.
Flukes are nice. Tell us about the fluky story.
I've always loved performing. I've always loved singing, and I was always very outgoing. And then when I was 7 or 8 years old, I was at a party, an Easter party with my family, and a singing coach had heard me sing, and I was very precocious and performance oriented, and he suggested that I audition for an agent. And my mom was a little weary because she's in film, and to put her kid in acting, she wasn't sure, but I auditioned and I loved it, and the rest is history, I guess.
The rest is history.
Exactly. So in that process, did you feel that you were going to be able to do this? You said first you didn't want to do it, then you did. What made you start to love it?
It wasn't that I didn't want to, I wasn't forced into it. I just never sought it out, I guess, if that makes sense. So, I tried it out because I was willing to try anything out, and I ended up just falling in love with it. But I wasn't forced into it, I just ended up being given the opportunity, which was very fortunate.
So was your mother always watching you and guiding you and making sure you didn't fall into those pitfalls that so many young actresses fall into?
She was. My mom has been my mentor for forever, really, but for acting for over 10 years now.
But that was a good thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, very lucky. Not a lot of people can say that it's right in their family.
Not the typical stereotype stage mom.
No, not at all.
Okay, good.
Let's talk a little bit about what was one of your favorite roles in your career? Which one would you say?
Favorite roles in my career. That's always such a hard question. I would say one of my favorite roles may have been one that I just did, actually. It was on a Disney Plus show called Just Beyond that came out in October of this year. So it's very recent. And it's an anthology series. So every episode is, different cast, different story. And that one was just really wild. Like I completely transformed my look. I had to wear prosthetics. So I think that was just the most intriguing role that I've gotten to do.
Interesting. And what do you think you're most known for? So you talked about the one your favorite. What do you think most known?
Probably Wonder, film that I did in, what was that, 2016, I think, it came out 2017.
Great. All right, Dave, next question.
When did you go toward the horror genre?
No. So we're talking about The Accursed. So The Accursed just came out November 12th. And, The Accursed has been in the works since 2017.
Really? Did COVID slow it down?
No, actually, we got very lucky. It did not slow it down. A little bit, but we ran an Indiegogo campaign for it in 2017, which is when I hopped on as a producer. And then we got the rest of the funds. And in 2019, we filmed it. So right before the pandemic. And then we were in post-production during the pandemic. And then, now it's out in 2021. But I love the horror genre. I never got cast in it. And then we had one here and I was like, fabulous.
Exactly. And why do you, that process took longer? What do you think is just basically just getting the right people in place, especially if you've been working on that project for a while?
Yeah, I mean, we started fundraising in 2017, and raising funds for an indie film is its biggest challenge. So
Exactly. Yeah.
we got it by 2019 and filmed it with a really great group of people.
Where do you see indie films going now, especially with COVID? Because it's more expensive now to film indie films. You got to have more money, more precautions need to be put in place. And
Mhm.
you think there's been less indie films after COVID, or is it starting to pick up again in your take?
I think it's starting to pick up again. I think that indie filmmaking has been on a steady rise for a long time. And I think now with the emergence of so many different kinds of technologies, like you don't really have to spend as much money to film a movie anymore. You can do it on your phone. There's so many different mediums that are available to people now. So I think that indie films are now a highly competitive market.
You're so young, and yet you're producing this film. Is this your first film you're producing, or no?
It's the first feature film I've produced, but I did some shorts
So how did you get that opportunity?
because my mom, again, you'll see she comes up a lot. Uh, she founded Almost Normal Productions, which is the production company that did.
Almost Normal, great name.
Thank you. Yeah, she founded it in 2010. And then obviously I was just a youngin back then, as if I'm not now. But in 2017, I kind of wanted to hop on officially when I was 16, and I wanted to hop on and actually go through the process of producing a project. And The Accursed was already in the works. And so I just decided to give it a go.
Exactly. And
More and more actor.
so I'm gonna go, Dave. You go.
I just want to say more and more actors seem to want to get into acting, not acting, producing and directing, in addition to acting, sometimes instead of acting. Why is that trend? What is it that draws them to that?
That's a good question. I think, at least for me, I think that I like having, I think not, knowledge is power, and being able to know the whole process of what goes into making a film really helps me as an actor, because when I work on sets that I'm not working behind the scenes, where I'm just in front of the camera, I like having the awareness of what's actually going on.
Yeah, not just take blank
Yeah,
sight.
exactly. With acting, or replace
Cool.
acting with producing.
So tell her what it takes to be a producer. Go into like some of the process of producing. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, you wear
Secrets.
a lot of hats.
yeah.
You wear a lot of hats as a producer. It's a lot more it's a completely different type of creativity than acting. Although I think my mom and Catherine would argue that producing is not creative at all because they directed and wrote the film. But I think that producing requires you have to put a whole project together. You have to get it off ground. You have to put all the because filmmaking is like a machine. Like, you've got to get all the moving parts together, and that's what a producer does. So I think that when I got into producing, it made me really appreciate what it takes to make a movie and get it on the big screen. So you go from the fundraising from the development to the fundraising to the pre-production to the filming to the post-production, and then to the marketing and distribution phase. So you've really got to see the whole project through. And I think it just takes a lot of patience and a lot of grind.
Now I'm a dummy. So how does producing different from directing?
Because a producer, you're involved from the beginning to the end. Not that a director isn't, but I think that directors often get attached once the funding is in place. Sometimes not, but the director doesn't have anything to do usually with like getting the funds, and then also with marketing the film and getting distribution. That's not really in the director's wheelhouse. The director, it's very creative. You're there to bring the film to life, but not necessarily to get the whole team together.
And there are some producer directors as well, where they do both. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Elizabeth and Catherine, who directed The Accursed, they also produced it. So definitely, I don't know that I would want to produce and direct. I think that's a lot.
So what do you think defining the difference between directing, producing, then we're going to get to Accursed. I'm just interested in this because I interview directors and producers, and I really kind of think I understand the difference, but what is the difference?
The main difference, I think that directing is incredibly creative, and I think producing is very technical. I think as a producer, you're forced to, like I said, you're forced to bring everything together. You're dealing with things like paperwork and fundraising and all the nitty gritty. Whereas a director, you really shouldn't be worrying about all of that.
So the producer's almost close to like the owner of the film, but they have more power in certain ways, while the director's the one that gives the whole idea of what the creative needs to look like. Putting
Yeah,
on,
the director is the one who's bringing the vision of the film to life.
which is those great directors that we've heard about in our careers, say the wow ones that have just done such amazing things. And a lot of times the director's never one that had the script, never was the one that cast everything, or the directors cast it, but it sees the vision and is able to get the vision to where it needs to be. Then production gets the final product out, right? You're looking at the pre-production, post-production, and final distribution. That's the producers.
Yes, definitely. I mean, directors and producers are equally as important. It's just that one is focusing on actually creating the film that you end up seeing, the visual and the creative aspect of it. But without the producer, the director wouldn't be able to do their job.
So
Right.
when does the producer win the argument, and when does the director win the argument?
I think it really depends project to project. I think it depends on the relationship. Ideally, the director and the producer get along.
Especially if they are one person.
I know. So I think that ultimately it just depends on the relationship, the
Yeah.
the relationship between each individual producer and director. But I think it should be collaborative.
So it's
Everybody-
technical versus creative, and
Yeah.
it's that battle.
But everybody's working towards the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
you should be collaborating and not clashing too much, hopefully.
The director's almost like the head coach in a way, with all the people around it. The assistant coaches really are doing the job. The head coach is the one that comes up with the game plan, but without all those other coaches, like think about in football, you wouldn't have a team if you didn't have a good offensive coordinating coach. All the
Exactly.
So you're saying the head coach is the producer?
no director.
It's the
Director.
director.
Yeah, I'm still confused.
Definitely the head coach is the director, because he is directing the plan of what's done, but if without everyone behind the scenes and what takes to get a film out. All right, let's talk about The Accursed now. Tell us about the premise. I watched the trailer. It seems really scary. I want to definitely see it. So, tell me a little bit about it. Yeah.
Yeah, you love horror movies.
Well, in a nutshell, The Accursed is about a woman, Hannah, who spends 2 decades suppressing a curse that can annihilate her whole bloodline. So it's pretty morbid. And somebody in the family releases that curse. So, all hell breaks loose.
But there's a point in the movie where you're kind of rooting for the ghost. What's that about?
Well, I can't give too much
Yeah.
away. Like, we like to tell stories about multifaceted characters, even ghosts. So the ghost was a person at one point, and she is now back, and she is back for some vengeance.
And you feel some sympathy.
I do feel some sympathy because, nobody is seeking vengeance for no reason.
Hmm.
So let's talk about, do you believe in the paranormal?
Do I believe?
Yeah.
I believe in ghosts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and in certain ways, some people do, some people don't, and then some of it is not real, and some of it is. So you see these different paranormal shows. What do you think makes fear such an important thing that people want to have to watch and do those things? What do you think it is that love horror movies, love the paranormal? What is the excitement? I think it's because of the unknown. What do you think?
Well, I mean, people watch movies, it's a form of escapism, right? So I think that some people like watching comedies, they like to laugh as a form of relief. And I think
Yes.
others are kind of adrenaline junkies and like being on the edge of their seat and being distracted in that way. And I think that horror films offer their own type of relief, at least for me. Like when I'm watching a horror film, no matter what's going on in my life, no matter where I'm at, how busy, whatever, that is all I can think about, because it's all consuming. Like if it's a good film,
And it's interesting. Comedy's more my escapism. I enjoy horror, but comedy is my thing in certain ways to laugh. And I think that anytime and I want things to get my brain off of things because of the amount of time that's laser focused on different things. So it's to each his own. I think all forms of entertainment, as long as it's good entertainment, is interesting. It's just interesting to see how that develops and grows for sure. And what do you think for horror fans, why they should see The Accursed? Give us that reason. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that for horror fans, The Accursed is unique. It's different. It still has all of the horror elements that you're looking for. If you like witchcraft, if you like magic, paranormal, it's all in there. It's got your classic jump scares, but it's also something that you haven't seen before because it's told against an Eastern European backdrop. So it's got interesting kinds of lore that I find unique. And as somebody who likes horror, I like watching films that have done something that I haven't seen before because it's difficult in a genre that's done virtually like everything, you know?
All right. So Dave has his final questions involving caregiving, and it'll be interesting to see to hear your answer. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah,
Right?
to someone who believes in ghosts.
Uh,
So I'm a caregiver. My wife had a stroke 25 years ago. She lost her speech, became paralyzed on one side, and we struggled for a couple of years, the grief process. But she decided, hey, God still has me around. I'm going to reinvent myself. I'm going to do everything I did before, which was a lot. And so now she's amazing. She's like a cross between Martha Stewart and Wonder Woman, like a one-arm wallpaper hanger. I come home, the food's on the table, the laundry's done, the house is clean, etc. So I've learned how to not make mistakes, and so now I'm caregiver Dave, and I help other caregivers not make the same mistakes I made, because 30% of caregivers actually die before their loved ones do it. I mean, it's a very stressful job. So my question is, you're so young. Have you had any experience with caregiving with maybe your grandparents?
No, I haven't. I can't say
No,
that I
lucky you.
No, no, I am. I have not had any experience caregiving.
Yeah, because
I
as
think
as our as our elderly loved ones get older, maybe you have some friends who are caring for some parents who are,
Mm.
having some problems, et cetera. I say it's inevitable. I mean, if you're either going to become a caregiver or need a caregiver one day, and so just put that in the
Sure,
back of your mind.
I'm really close, very, very close to my family. So I'm in LA with my immediate family, my parents and my sister, but the rest of my family is out in Bosnia. And so
Wow.
grandparents, my grandfather died 7 or 8 years ago, but I do have three of my grandparents and they're all healthy and well, thankfully. So,
Good.
naturally, if there was a need for caregiving, obviously we would be
now,
there.
if you're communicating with them, that's a form of caregiving. The older people get, especially
They get
grandparents,
lonely. Yeah.
having those conversations with them is a form of caregiving because you're giving them that time that might they need to spend time to hear from you and things like that. So that's a form of caregiving as well, I believe, in a way. Some people are close to that person and helping them, but the other form of caregiving is making those phone calls, doing those to-do lists, helping them in other ways. And that's a form of caregiving sometimes, Dave, that I'm sure you bring up in your show for sure.
Absolutely.
So that's important. So where can we go connect? The film is out now. Is it available on VOD now as well? You
It
said,
is available on VOD. You can just honestly, for all of the platforms that it's available on, you can go on the company's website, which is almostnormalproductions.com. And you'll see all the platforms, but it's available on iTunes, Vudu, YouTube Movies, Amazon, Google Play, all kinds of platforms. So
it's crazy. Yeah, but everyone needs to check it out if you're a horror fan. Appreciate you coming by, and thanks again for taking the time as well. Appreciate it. We're back to the Neil Haley Show here on the Caregiver Dave Celebrity segment. I'm excited to welcome the caregiver Dave Nassaney. Dave, what's going on? How are you?
Yay. Great to be on the Neil Haley Show again. I'm doing great.
Yeah, it's always great to be on it. And the celebrity one that you're part of that success ranked number 16 celebrity podcast in the world,
Really?
above Shaq and all that, according to FeedSpot. So it's a tremendous honor where we've been growing and to see different celebrity shows and where it's gone and all the major celebrities and the big things happening for what I'm doing. But let's talk
Cool.
about your success of your caregiving podcast and where it's going now and how you continue to grow it.
Well, no one's more surprised than me. I mean, FeedSpot has us as number 2 caregiver podcast. And so we're really proud of that. Whoops, got to turn my phone off here. Sorry about that. So we're really proud of that. And I've been doing this now for 8 years. It's really hard to understand and explain, but I never thought that it would be as successful as it was. But I just kept doing it because I have a passion to do it, and I have guests on and caregivers, caregiver experts, and people who are actually caregivers. Most of the experts have done caregiving before, and we just want to find out, why are you still alive? Because 30% of you actually die before their loved ones do. So you must be doing something right to still be here. And they give their advice and their tips. And I go to the National Publicity Summit to find guests, and every time I go there, I'll pick up 40 or 50 guests, so almost a year's worth. And then it was I had so many guests that I had to cut my shows down from an hour to 30 minutes. Now I do 2 a week, 30-minute shows, because we were scheduling them out way too far in advance. And now I may have to go to 3 shows. So we're having great success. People are watching, people are listening, and they're hopefully becoming better caregivers. And my message to caregivers is, even if you're not a caregiver, because I'm speaking to everybody, because everyone's got the same problems as a caregiver. Because before you're a caregiver, you're a normal person, and you have trouble saying no, you have trouble putting in boundaries, you have trouble just communicating with your loved ones, etc. And then you become a caregiver, everything's just magnified. So we try to teach caregivers how to say no. I tell them, just practice in the mirror. No, 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 no. Try 100 different ways of saying no, because they just can't say no, and then they just keep saying yes, and they pretty soon they burn out because there's nothing left to give. It's like your telephone when it says danger 10%, danger 2%. I'm always running out of battery on my phone because I wait until it's down to 20%. I should just keep it charged all the time. Or your gas tank. I own a gas station. Yeah, ask me how many times I've run out of gas. So I've learned, don't take your tank below half. Keep it full. Keep it topped off. And true with caregivers too.
And that's so true, Dave. And it's that process. It's that process of trying not to be burned out, saying no. But it's tough because sometimes they can't speak, as your wife has to use not words, but other ways of communication, that it can become very frustrating. How can you say that word no and walk away when you're burned out?
Well, coincidentally, my wife just had a meltdown 2 nights ago over nothing really. But she, Thursday is our date day, and she protects it very strongly. And I told her that I had a doctor appointment I needed to go to, and she goes, no, why did she's communicating, why did you schedule on Thursday? And she just lost it. I mean, she just started screaming and wailing, and I couldn't stop her. I've never heard her scream and wail as long. I mean, she went on for like 30 minutes, just nonstop. And I realized that something was going on, that all of this pent up frustration, years and years and years, she's been doing this for 25 years. It just needed to get out. And this was the little spark that did it. I mean, she was wailing like I died. That's the kind of wailing and crying that you save for when your dog got hit by a car or your husband just died. And there was no logic, no calming her down. So I just put her in the room and I just let her go through the process. And then when it was all over, I says, wow, what was that all about? And she says, I says, well, you obviously had a lot of frustration in you that needed to come out. You can't leave this stuff inside. It's got to come out. And if you don't do it daily, then, you'll have an
Exactly.
episode like that.
And you're holding it
But
in
I
so much.
understood, I
Yeah.
didn't get all freaked out. I didn't, yell. I just realized what was going on. And sometimes you just have to do that. It's not fun being Charlene, even though she's having a great time being Charlene. But if I was trapped in her body, God, I couldn't handle it as well as she is. She's amazing. She makes us normal people look like whiners and complainers. She's like Martha Stewart and Wonder Woman. And she's just like a one-arm wallpaper hanger. She does everything she did before, a interior decorator, gourmet cook. I come home and the clothes are folded and the dishes are in the dishwasher and the food's on the table and the laundry is done. And I says, where are the elves that are helping you do this? She's got one arm, one leg, and duct tape over her mouth. How does she do that? I can't do that.
Exactly. And that's the amazing thing that you see. But the burnout of caregiving, what do you think that caregivers need to do more of that they're not doing?
Well, my mission is to teach people not to do all the mistakes that I made in the beginning. We had a 2-year grieving period. She was very angry, and I just didn't think I could be with her anymore. I wrote her a letter. I said, Charlene, why are you so mean to me? I mean, I'm trying to be your caregiver and your husband, and I just can't do it anymore. And I read that letter over and over again. I says, how can I give this to the woman I love, to my soulmate, to the one I've been with for 25 years? I couldn't do it. I put it in my filing cabinet over here, and I just went on in my grief. But fortunately, I found a business card in my pocket that told me, go to a caregiver support group. I didn't even know what a caregiver was, didn't know what a support group was. But I figured somebody gave it to me. I must need it. I went, and I learned that I had to put my oxygen mask on first. I learned if I didn't take care of me, I couldn't take care of her. So I really had permission to just be what I thought was being selfish, because nobody wants to be selfish. But I was selfish. I took care of me so I could take care of her. And you know what? It started rubbing off on her. She saw that I wasn't miserable when she would yell at me. And pretty soon, she decided, well, what am I so miserable about? If he's having fun, maybe I should have fun too. So she reinvented herself. She has a strong faith in God, and she realized that if God left her here and didn't take her, then he must have a purpose and a reason for her. So she became her old self again, and our love was rekindled, and I became Dave, the caregiver's caregiver, and I helped caregivers to survive and not make my mistakes.
So the thing is basically to get that support that's needed in a caregiving group.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You need that support. So my website, caregiverdave.com, is a support group, an online support group. And my Facebook page, 35,000 members, I think, is the latest number. And they come in, I'll put a funny meme out, and I'll get like 200 comments and 1,000 likes and 100 shares. And it's people helping people, caregivers helping people. They tell their story, and because thank God I don't have to do it, because I'd be on the internet all day. But it's like a support group, like a therapy group, right?
And that's important, because when you have that interaction in community, a community is such an important thing.
You're not alone. Someone else is going through this. I'm normal. I'm not feeling stuff that I shouldn't be feeling. And if they made it, I can make it too. And that's the message.
Exactly. And that message, and through your show, you're going to hear stories of caregiving from every type of person. It's not just going to be somebody you would never think that's going to be a caregiver, right? Because you always talk about that. And when we do the celebrity segment, when you ask that celebrity that last question about caregiving, they're blown away because they have dealt with it in some way. And the stories are amazing, and the tears that some of them talk about.
I know. I'm so amazed. Almost every single one of them has a caregiver story, and then it's like a switch hits on their head, and all of a sudden, they're having fun and doing all this, and all of a sudden they start tearing up. Oh yeah, man.
Charlie Pride's son talking about Charlie. Oh my gosh, that was really breaking. Like, wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it was your idea, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to take every one of those interviews and transcribe them and put them into a book.
Yeah.
And my last book, it's My Life Too, Thrive and Stay Alive as a Caregiver. I just changed the title to It's Your Life Too, because it isn't about me, it's about you. And it's like you're banging your hand on the table. Dang it, it's my life too. I'm going to survive. There's no reason for me to be miserable taking care of. And a lot of these people on my Facebook page, they're just complaining, oh, it's a terrible day. What do you mean there's joy in caregiving? What do you mean I'm supposed to be happy? I just had to clean up, a diaper mess all over the place. They're just looking at the glasses as half empty instead of half full. It's a joy, because many of these people, when their loved one is gone, they're I miss them so much. Yeah, it was hard, but gee, I wish they were back again. I remember Dr. Laura Schlesinger had a show where she had this caller who called in all the time complaining about her husband leaving his toenail clippings all over the floor, and it would just drive her crazy. And she called back like 6 months later and says, you know what? I'm the person who called about the toenail clippings. My husband passed away.
Oh my.
I would give anything to have those toenail clippings back on the floor. So
it's amazing this thing. They just never know. And so, and I think that to hear those stories, to hear those people tell about caregiving, especially what you do in your platform. And they can listen right now to your podcast where?
Yeah, caregiverdave.com. And Amazon. And well, Amazon is the book, and then my YouTube channel, Caregiver Dave. YouTube, got them on 26 platforms. You know what they are: Blog Talk Radio, Podbean. I mean, they're everywhere. Just type in Caregiver Dave, and it goes on forever, just like your name does.
Yeah. That's important, and that's what some people don't have.
Branding,
So if they want to be able to do it, it's putting the time and effort in, or have somebody else help you get to that point. And that's the big thing about Google, because at the end of the day,
everybody's passionate about something, you know, and everybody wants their name. But before I became a caregiver, my name maybe 3 or 4 or 5 things about my gas station, or whatever. But now it just goes on; it never ends. Somebody wants that kind of brand recognition and internet presence, then they need to talk to you, because you're the expert at that.
Exactly. And that's right. And I know what to do and do it. And then the thing that happens, Dave, is that, you know, through the show and interviewing those celebrities, it's so much easier when you're doing other events where you're speaking, to go up to these celebrities.
Right.
So, man, I've talked to so many of them already. Right. And I have, and they're touched by the story. And
you don't know how many people want to, well, who is this guy? You know, and they'll Google you, and then all of a sudden, whoa.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they've done that to you. I've had guests say, well, I wasn't going to go on the show, but I Googled your name, and I decided, well, maybe I need to.
Isn't that just crazy? Who knows all that? But the best place, caregiverdave.com. Dave, I appreciate it. Look forward to continued success of the show, our shows, and we'll keep growing, but we're always providing great information for people to help them. I hope we're not going to get completely censored from everything. That's coming soon. So hopefully then we're going to have to do a subscription service. Who knows?
I haven't been canceled yet, so I must be not offending them enough.
Exactly. We have to cut your mic. That's what we do. I appreciate it, Dave. Take care, man, and we'll talk soon. We're back to the Neil Haley Show here on the Caregiver Dave Celebrity segment. I'm excited to welcome Caregiver Dave Nassaney. Dave, how are you? What's going on?
I'm awesome here in sunny California in November, where you guys are probably freezing.
Yes, definitely freezing. It's cold. I don't want it to be cold anymore. And, you know, it is what it is. We deal with it. And our guest today, I know you're going to like this, Dave. And especially, I think you're going to like the topic, especially because you've done marriage counseling yourself in your career. And the title of this book is so catchy. But Danny's been on different shows from Huckabee. He's soon going to be on Penn and Teller. Go ahead and introduce him.
I don't know where you find these great guests, Neil. Good for you. Danny Ray, best known as a world-renowned illusionist, performs mind-blowing trips with life-changing messages. That was tricks, by the way. Now he's pulling back the curtain to show how a great marriage is, releasing the book, Can't Make Your Wife. No, I can't make my... Wait a minute. No, I can't make your wife disappear. I thought I was going to say my wife. Welcome to the show, Danny.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it. Thanks. Yeah, nice to see both of you. Not in person, but you know, via Zoom.
What is it? It's a Zoom. It's where we are together. That's what when the pandemic started, I decided I was just doing radio only and never would put my camera on, except when I did the TV studio, because I have a TV studio, and I would just send it as radio and there'd be slides. Well, that didn't work. And then I said, you know what? It's time for me to get into this game. And you get to really develop connections, not just being on a radio interview where you just hear their voice, but everything. So Danny, tell us specifically how this started as an illusionist, because it didn't start there, did it at all? Right? How did that develop, the story?
Yeah, so I started doing illusions when I was 10 years old. At 15, started doing it in a restaurant that led to, you know, local shows around Southern California. And then at 17, started to follow Christ. At 18, had an opportunity to go around the world with a world-renowned magician, and he wanted to take me to Vegas, New York, Europe. And I prayed about it, felt like God was telling me no, told him no, and then ended up getting involved in youth ministry. That led to like a decade of, you know, doing a lot of counseling with youth, but that also led to doing counseling with parents. And then at 28 years old, I was at the gym on a stair mat. We'll just say on a machine. And I was on that machine, And I was reading this article of this magician that I met 10 years prior, and he was up for all these fraudulent charges for taking college students around the world, racking up their visas, and then left them stranded.
Wow.
And so it was one of those like eye-opening moments of like waiting for God's timing. And so in 2003, that's when we launched this ministry of combining, God's transforming message with captivating illusions. And then, yeah, what other questions do you have? I'll leave it at that for now.
Wow. It is so rare to find a magician who is not ashamed of the gospel. Good for you.
Thank you. That is for me what it's about, is to be able to glorify God in whatever I do. And with the sleight of hand, it took a while. I was reading Romans 11:29. When I was 28, they were in two different worlds. Do the magic over here, show the gospel over here. But I read Romans 11:29. It says God's gifts and his calling are irrevocable. And it was the first time I saw that these are in separate worlds and they need to be inextricable from one another so that I could live out the purposes that God's designed for me.
Oh, that's great.
Good for you. Good for you. Sounds like he's guiding you and directing you, and he's opening doors and you're walking through them.
I am thankful for the doors he's opening. Yeah, my wife and I just celebrated 25 years. And as a part of that journey, we wanted to give back to the community. We started going to marriage counseling and marriage seminars and marriage conferences, in our engagement and in our marriage. And we've had a lot of tips and advice and ideas that people have given us to help us out. And so we wanted to put a book together that would parallel the different magic concepts and the different biblical concepts and see where those intersect, and then put together a book that would encourage and empower people to just really have a thriving marriage. Yeah.
And Danny, before we get to the book, I wanted to go more into, I loved your Huckabee segment. It was funny with the presidents and leaders and all that stuff. And then everyone needs to watch it because it's funny, especially how Governor Huckabee kind of really reacted differently at the end of that, which was funny. But how do you kind of put your illusion and comedy? I think it's a mixture. You're an illusionist with comedy, right? And the gospel all mixed together. So when someone goes to see you perform, what should they expect?
So I'm trying to create like the best, most magical, funny, interesting experience that I possibly can give. And then I want to intertwine God's word into that in a way that isn't cheesy. Like in 2003, and this isn't to put any other magicians or comedians down, but the few shows I saw it was a really funny show, like for the comedians. And then at the end, it would be like, oh yeah, and by the way, I'm a Christian. And it felt like an appendage to the show. And I saw a couple of magicians do that as well. And when I read that verse I told you about in Romans 11:29, I felt like they needed to be integrated. And so my first idea to integrate it was to force a card on somebody. And in the middle of the show, they reach in, they take a card. It just happens to be the King of Hearts, right? And so I go, oh, wait, you took the King of Hearts, but I act like it's kind of off the cuff. Like, wait, I need to stop because anytime somebody takes the King of Hearts, I have to tell them about the King of Hearts, Jesus, he's the true king. And so then
Wow.
that would lead me into a message about Jesus and how he came down, so at this whole piece, I still do it every once in a while, but it was like my first piece of going, this is integrating it into the show instead of making it something that feels like, oh, now he's going to share the message. So yeah, there's a couple different ways that I share that way.
Wow. Are we ready to talk about your book?
Yes, let's go to the book. So
Why did you write it? What do you hope to accomplish by it? And it's out right now?
It is out right now. It came out yesterday.
Wow.
So, November 16th. So yeah, really, really thankful for that. Yeah. So why did I write it? Is to give back. We've been investing in a lot of marriage. As a pastor, you end up counseling a lot of married couples. And so we've had a lot of people over to the house over the years and really tried to, help them to live out the things that God's designed for their marriage. And so when about 2 years ago, we started to talk about what would it look like to put out a book for our 25th anniversary, kind of as a mile marker. And so my whole office was destroyed with paper everywhere and sticky notes and ideas and stories and biblical principles and things that we've learned. And then we started to put those into the chapters and put it all together. Yeah. So it's been a crazy journey, but really want to invest in couples. And I just think it's the heartbeat of our culture and society. Is the foundation is marriage. And we've got far away from that, but the more strong marriages we have in our communities, that impacts our families, impacts schools, impacts politics, impacts everything. And so I just go, we need to invest strongly in marriage.
Wow,
So-
what a breath of fresh air, because when we hear the media, I mean, we're hearing just the opposite. And so good for you.
See, and Dave, I wouldn't say the media. The media, we choose to create the media. This is the thing that people have to understand. You can go to specifically the high-end, big level media, or you can choose to consume any type of media. And that's the opportunity. There's an audience for everyone. I've been told that many times. So Danny, let's kind of go right into specifically now. I think what makes books successful, anything successful, is the title. And the title absolutely is phenomenal. It makes you think right off the bat, and it relates to your career, and it also relates to what the message you want. How did you come up with it? Is it you, Danny, or did somebody else? Because it's a phenomenal title.
Yeah, I did come up with the title. It's the question I get asked the most at the back table. You know, people think they're being clever. They're like, hey, can you make my wife disappear? You know, and so from hearing that so much, and we were thinking about this book, it just kind of came together as, no, I can't make your wife disappear. And we, you know, people were like, well, you know, then do people think it's just a book for husbands? And, you know, what if you did spouse? What if you did friend? I was like, it just doesn't have that punch. And honestly, like, it's not funny, you know, because nobody says, can you make my friend disappear or spouse disappear? It's always the husbands trying to say, hey, can you make my wife disappear? But it is a book for couples and for, you know, for a marriage. Yeah.
Cool. Great gift idea.
Definitely. And that's one thing, but I think it's also, Danny, you said it's giving back, you know, for your success as an illusionist and as a pastor for your years. You said, this is something I want to give back, because some people write books for reasons. Is really that give back, right? To say, hey, I had a great marriage, 25 years so far, and I want people to know what it makes to to have a great marriage, right?
Yeah, I think you know, as we started to approach the 25-year mark, you start to go, well, A, I have something to say, and B, what is it about our marriage that we genuinely like love being together? We love, you know, dating each other. We love getting to know each other. We love doing stuff together. We love, for years, we ran you know, the business and ministry together. So what is it that other couples, you know, that would meet with us, it just didn't seem to have that connection? And we were kind of in search ourselves of like, what did we do differently? And so I think there's several things that we try to lay out in the book that we did differently to create a healthy marriage, that we saw the parallels of other people that are doing that as well, that have healthy and great marriages. So, and it's not that our marriage is perfect. It's a marriage, 25 years, you know, there's ups, there's downs, there's struggle, there's pain, there's suffering, there's loss, there's all those things. But what is it that has helped us to push through and stay on the same page? And those are the things that we were trying to like lay out and look at in the book.
Wow. You know, I've been together 47 years with my wife, and
Yes.
our 25th was a great one. What's your secret? I mean, what is your success rate? I know you're dealing with two individuals with their own free wills. Are you saving more marriages than you're not?
You know, that's a funny question that I think nobody ever asked, but I like it, because we do feel like we have our wall of shame, you know, where it's like, oh, you know, and it genuinely like breaks our heart when we see couples that either I've done the ceremony for their wedding, and you know, they've gone separate ways, and it just breaks your heart. You want to see people last, and you want to, you know, pour into them and see them thrive and just love being together. And there's times, here's the conclusion we've come to that way, is it the responsibility doesn't lie on us, but I will say it is heartbreaking on our end, and we don't have 100% success by any means. I don't know what the number would be. There are more successes than failures. I know that,
Right.
but yeah, and even the ones that don't go through a divorce, they stay together, but there's not like a deep love for each other in that marriage. It's like, well, as Christians, we can't go separate ways, so we should just stay together. Like it is just weird and not like based on like love and desire for one another. And so we keep pouring into those marriages and encouraging and trying to help them to live remarkably and all those things. So
I'm
And so-
assuming you and your wife were Christians when you got married, or did that happen later?
yeah, I became a Christian at 17 years old. I met her the next year. She was 17, I was 18.
Wow.
In college, and then we got engaged December 30th, 1991, 4:30. Then yeah, we were engaged for 2.5 years. Don't necessarily recommend that. That was 3, but it really needs to be like this, but it was, we did 2 aisles. We graduated one weekend. The next weekend we got married. 2 weeks after that, we moved to Colorado Springs to start my master's in divinity at Fuller Theological Seminary. And so
Oh, right here.
that
in Pasadena.
was
So what
beginning.
makes a great marriage, Danny? When you look at specifically enough trying to consult couples, and then sometimes those marriages don't work out, because especially when you say there's not love, but what makes a great marriage so that people are going through counseling can understand what do they need if they can keep that going? What are the things that are needed?
Yeah, there's a lot to that. One of the things that we've seen in every marriage that we've worked with is when you learn to have the ability to forgive, genuinely forgive, and move forward from whatever the offense was, and then be able to be gracious. Like, I can't pull out of my driveway without my wife being like, hey, watch out for the fire hydrant. I'm like, babe, I've been out of it, but that's marriage, right? Is there's tension sometimes there, but I have to learn to give her grace and not just be frustrated with her and angry. And then it just starts us down a bad path as I go, okay, this is part of, like, she's working on, like not saying anything, but at the same time, she will say something or she'll grab the handle. I'm like, we haven't left the driveway, right? So there needs to be forgiveness and grace, and not just like, this is what you always do. So one of the sections we talked about, always and never statements and removing those from your language. And so yeah, to answer your question, I would say forgiveness and grace. I don't think it's any one secret, like, oh, here's the one secret, but that's a huge one. Another one is going to bed on the same page, like every day, just being on the same page. And so not letting the sun set on your anger. Is we really work hard on dealing with everything every single day and not putting stuff off till tomorrow where it could fester and turn into bitterness.
Wow, that's awesome. So you've got 25 years marriage. Your career, I'm interested in your career. What did you do for money in the early years? Were you a magician? Did you have another job? When did being a magician, was it a hobby? Was it your source?
Yeah, so it was a hobby for a number of years, and I would get gigs here and there, but our source of income was being a youth pastor. Early on, that was, how we provided for the family. And then in 2003, we were praying through what would it look like to combine the message and the magic and really bring those two together. And so in 2003, I went down to 30 hours in January, then 20 hours in March, and, down to 10 hours, to the point I went to the pastor and went, 10 hours is basically like showing up on a Sunday morning. And he was like, your presence is important. In June of 2003, we launched the ministry with, count them, 0 gigs, but we were reaching out to different people and connecting with people. And we had an opportunity with National Youth Workers to do their convention. At that time, there was about 15,000 people that would go to the convention in 3 different cities. And they said, hey, you could do I met with their staff. They said I could do a late night option. At that time, the late night option, there were 30 or 40 late night options from bands, comedians, speakers, technology stuff, just a ton of things. And so we packed out the room in all three cities. And by the end of November, people started just booking kind of nonstop. By December, we paid our bills for the first time. And by God's grace, we've been afloat ever since, but it's been a roller coaster. It's never just been, now it's just straight up and there's no looking back and there's no down moments. Obviously, the pandemic was a major hit for us in March of 2020, probably 50 events canceled. And by the end of April, we had, I did 172 shows in 2019. And so in 2020, we had 100 cancel. And so by God's grace, we had learned to save, and we had all kinds of different methods to kind of stay afloat, but it was a rough year, to say the least.
For everybody.
But it gave us the ability to finish this book. We were able to put a lot of time and energy into writing and into pivoting and trying to create other sources of income. And yeah, so this was one.
And the big things are happening you can't bring up, Danny, but one that you can bring up is, and we'll be airing the show next week, but you're going to be on Penn and Teller on December 3rd. How cool is that? And especially as an illusionist, you got to love those guys, right? And to be able to be in their presence and to be interviewed by them is amazing, right?
Yeah, it was. So for years, people were like, you should do Penn and Teller, you should do, America's Got Talent. And by God's grace, we're just really busy, and we're just like, we don't want to look left and right and go try to do something else. We want to stay on course. And during the pandemic, it was like, well, what else are we doing? So February 27th of this year, I auditioned, sent in a tape, or, a YouTube video, and, unlisted, and they watched it. And apparently they liked it because they wrote back and said, hey, we want to work with you on a script. And so we worked with, I worked with them on a script. And then in April, they said, all right, we'll see you in Vegas. And then it was really like diving deep into a piece that I've done 1,000 times, and rehearsing it with a new script and working with the producers and the writers to really bring that thing to what you'll see on December 3rd. But it was like literally 10 hours a day where I'm setting my phone to a 25-minute clock, and every minute I'd work on the same thing. It'd come around to the minute, work on the same thing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times until even though it was perfected, it was like, I need to work on it again so that it's flawless and that I don't have to think about it at all. Because it went from one layer of deception, the way I used to do this piece, to trying to fool two of the, greatest magicians alive that are very knowledgeable. And so I created 8 layers of deception to really try to fool them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious, with the way the world is these days, were you ever discouraged or had to decide, maybe the Christian thing wasn't going to work, or too many people were saying no? Did that ever happen?
So 2008, we started a branch of our ministry called Run Your Race. And it was going to be for like the corporate section. And so I wrote an ebook that had 52 chapters in it about business principles, and we did videos, and we put together a website. We spent about $15,000 really trying to launch this. And literally, and by that summer, we went down to 0 gigs. No, there were 2 gigs in September. And I was at the penultimate gig, and we had no shows coming up. I was just like, God, what's going on? Is this it? Are we done? And at that time, I was running Run Your Race, this corporate side, trying to get that off the ground. I was doing community groups at my church, getting that off the ground. I was writing a devotional every day for 3 years. I was doing our normal ministry stuff, and there's probably something else out there. But I was running Captivators, which was helping book other magicians and illusionists and kind of variety acts. So we have these 5 things, and God, at this show I was doing, he was like, do you want to do all of this, or do you want to do this? And we saw a great response to the gospel that night. And I was just like, God, I love doing this. And so literally my wife and I, we got on our knees that next day when I flew home, and we prayed, God, would you please open up the doors and we prayed for like a ridiculous amount of shows. I think it was 12 shows by the end of October, which was 6 weeks. So we've never booked that many in that short of a time. And we ended up doing 20 shows, and
Wow.
God just kind of opened up the floodgates. We ended up canceling other stuff, closing down other ministries, and just went, this is the one thing that we're going to do, and do it to the best of our ability.
That's fantastic. So Dave's last questions involving caregiving, and I'm sure that you're going to be interested in this, Danny, what he does. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, like I said, I've been married 47 years, but 25 of those years was a normal, wonderful relationship. We were entering the empty nest phase of life, and she complains about this headache she'd been having for 4 days. Well, it turned into a stroke. She lost her speech, became paralyzed on one side, and we entered into a 2-year grief period. We almost broke up, but we hung in there, and she eventually became her old self again, wasn't quite as angry, and she reinvented herself. And now she's this amazing person who does almost everything she did before. She's a cross between Martha Stewart and Wonder Woman. And she makes us normal people look like whiners and complainers. And so I became Dave, the caregiver's caregiver, help caregivers, not make the same mistakes I did. 30% of them die before their loved ones do. So I travel the country, been on 50 TV shows, just helping people to stay alive. My question to you is, I believe that if you're not a caregiver yet, just wait. You're either going to become one or need one. Has caregiving touched your life yet?
So I love your story, Dave. Wow, that is amazing. Yeah, and I think like when I look at caregiving, I think of like I think you're talking. Let me ask you what you mean by caregiving.
Caring for an elderly person, like your parents. They're getting older. Maybe they're coming down with dementia or Parkinson's. They can't stay alone anymore. Now you've got to get involved, either put them in a facility or get a caregiver to live with them so that they can help dress, help eat, help with toiletries, etc.
We're not on that side of things with either of our parents. My mother-in-law has rheumatoid arthritis, and over the last decade, it's continued to get worse, where it's affecting her hands and her really just daily health. She's just not able to go at the rate she used to be able to go. So like as a family, we always have to look at, putting that into the equation, maybe even putting rest into the equation during the day, where she used to just be able to go all day. It's like, let's go back to a hotel. Let's, make sure mom gets rest. And then we'll, go back out and, go again. We went to Hawaii a couple years ago with the whole family. And it was one of those things where we were aware of just
Her
limitations, but she still has a joy about her and still has a spunk to her and still wants to do those things. But we just need to make sure she gets rest so that she can. Yeah.
Right.
All right. Well, that's again, go to caregiverdave.com to find out that information, Danny. And it's what's great, he's doing caregiving. But I think you're right, caregiving. It's with kids too, especially during the pandemic. Anyone that was with their kids the entire time, that's caregiving. Any person that's helping and serving some sort of way, their whole being is caregiving, and caregiving is just not thought about as much. And so that's why Dave does it, and that's his mission. Now, Danny, where can we purchase the book? Because it's available now. And I want to check out your interview again with Huckabee. I think Dave needs to check it out as well. And then when Penn and Teller comes out, I'm sure you're going to have a link to that as well. But where can we connect with you? Where's the best place?
Yeah, if you go to DannyRayMagic.com, you could get the book there. You could get it at local bookstores. You could get it on Amazon, christianbook.com. There's a number of places you can pick it up.
Just a great thing, and everyone needs to check him out, because I'm telling you, he's funny, he's interesting, and he brings a humor that's needed in this world, especially in a tough, difficult time. So thanks again, Danny, for stopping by, and take care, Dave, and we'll see you guys. That was the Caregiver Dave Celebrity segment. Take care.